Hey, welcome in. Happy Friday, baby. Start this weekend off right. We are rolling through on our Scott Fish Bowl, a glorious week of just Scott Fish Bowl. So Scott Fish Bowl Palooza, we're keeping it growing. All the roster reviews you guys have sent to us. So we're going to kick that off this Friday. So I want to thank y'all for joining me. As you can tell, it's a 1v1 first-person shooter experience. You got myself. No one else was able to join, so you're getting the solo pod. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So me and you, 1v1 experience. Hope you all join. Have a good time with me. So let's kick it off and get into this. So what do you say we do this? So give me 1 sec. We're going to hop on FFU, and then I'll see you in a sec. And check it out. We are rolling right into Scott Fish Bowl. I thought it was a very good idea to start with the Reddit FF squad because Reddit just released their August AMA schedule, and our group, the FFU, is lucky enough to be a part of it. We will be doing it on early in September. So we were sandwiched in between some really heavy hitters. There's like the fantasy footballers, and a couple other people were like right before us, were like 444, all of these fun, really good companies. So like we were happy to be a part of the AMA. So wanted to give a shout out to Reddit while I had a chance and talk about their roster. So as we're doing that, with the Reddit roster, you see with CMC, Dak. I like the value on Dak. Like CMC is he's CMC. He's just a Greek god. He's the best fantasy football player and most impactful for the past basically decade, considering how the running back position has been. Like when Christian McCaffrey has played, he's been the most impactful guy. And you look at Vorp and all these fun stats, like he's special. Dak, solid pick. You know what you're getting out of Dak. I like the going with Kyron. I also got Kyron in the third. So I was in the 105, he's in 103. Kyron, another volume guy. And shocking, we get a report comes out that Kyron is going to be the running back one in that offense. Which is no surprise to really anybody who was thinking otherwise. Kind of didn't realize how bad the backfield was outside of Kyron. So he can still slip and still give you really good production because in this format, he pushes 27 points per game. So love the Kyron pick. Purdy, we've talked about him a bunch on this channel. Really love the Purdy pick because you're going to get similar production to Dak. You're just going to get him around and a half later. So yeah, I like the Purdy pick a lot more than Dak because we see Purdy what he does. He was above 2 wins above replacement in the scoring last year. So Purdy's great. Debo is the cheat code in this format, always pushing that 20 points per game, which is what you want because he gives you the rushing edge. There's been some hype come up about Debo already this offseason where they're talking about using him similar to what they did in 2021, his truly breakout season. I don't know if that's come to fruition, but if he's going to get those touches behind the line of scrimmage and those rushing attempts, like Debo is going to be a monster. So in this format, I love getting Debo in the 5th. Mike Evans, just another guy that's undervalued. George Pickens, Tank Dell, you're taking your shots on guys taking a step forward in that offense with the wide receivers. This is kind of where the wide receivers fall, right? So in this range of the draft, we kind of push the wide receivers down, and then you end up with these Pickens, these Dells, these Deontay's, all these guys. It's all about taking value because you're talking about wide receiver 48, the 9-10 Tank Dell. Like you can't beat that. He's got significant upside at that cost. James Conner, Zach Moss, Ezekiel Elliott. The Moss pick is looking a little treacherous at this point. We'll see what happens with Chase Brown. I'm not sure if I fully want to invest in the backfield, but it's a 10th round. He could be the RB1 in that offense. And if you're going to be the RB1 in the Bengals offense, that's good. Elliott, there were some metrics that showed that Elliott had a better breakaway run rate than Saquon Barkley. So take that for what you want. And then there's the meme where it shows Elliott putting out 50 catches. It's HR violation. Jahmyr Gibbs does it. It's just a beautiful thing. So it is what it is with Elliott. He's really one of the cheapest production guys you can get for a running back position where like he doesn't have competition. Like we'll talk about Charbonnet in a second, but you know what you're getting out of Elliott. Should be fine. I don't think Dowdle's going to do anything. Like I think Ezekiel Elliott's going to be that guy because he's consistently been that guy. So even if it's going to be ugly, you'll probably be happy to have him. Taysom Hill's the upside shot. Like that's your quarterback 3. So if you wanted to go that route and you're a little tight end because as Reddit has here, he doesn't have a tight end. So getting Taysom Hill as your first tight end, you take that shot. So we've seen a few teams go this scenario where they pump the tight end position in general, where it's just like, you know what, we're just not going to do it. And I get it. Like you take the value that falls to you. So 100% with it. Hunter Henry, he's kind of just a guy at tight end. He'll run the routes. He'll do it for you. He's never really going to be a top 5 tight end, but he could be a back end. And in this format with the boost for tight end scoring, like don't mind Hunter Henry there. I like the Charbonnet pick. There's significant upside for him. He could challenge Ken Walker for touches. You like that. Then you got Lockett, Myers, 2 guys who are undervalued that because they're sexier options in the offense, but they're going to play a role and be impactful, and they could be flexible for you. So then we get to like towards the end of the draft where you're really just shooting your shot on upside. You got Bucky Irving, Deontay Foreman, Darnell Mooney, who's interestingly the Rondale Moore hype is just down bad. Like he's fallen behind like Ray Larry McLeod and stuff. So like I said earlier, I think Mooney's going to be the wide receiver 3 in that offense. And the Kirk Cousins offense, like that guy could be viable for you. So yeah, 100%. Naheem Hines should give you some kick returning, and Jamal Agnew. It's interesting if it's Agnew or Duvernay. We haven't really heard much out of Agnew because he was dealing with injury. So if you get the kick returner in that Jacksonville offense, the 22nd pick, that's the one. I like this roster overall. Tight end's a little light, but you get the impactful guys that you like, particularly like you got the high-end running backs. You got some difference-making wide receivers. If those quarterbacks do what we expect them to do, the squad will be looking good. You just need someone like Charbonnet, Irving, one of these guys to take a step forward to kind of help offset like the Elliott Zach Moss, because those guys are more floor plays than they are ceiling plays, and you're really looking for someone. So if you hit that ceiling, like you'll be liking how this roster plays out. But overall, like this is a competent roster. You know what you're going to be. You're going to be in competition. Hey, Mike, thanks for joining us today. Cheers to you. If I had a drink, I would. I got coffee here, so this is what it is. But cheers to you, my friend. So yeah, that's the overall Reddit roster right here. So we're just gonna say with that one. Overall, I like it. It's like a B+, A-. Really need a couple things in the back end to go a little bit different for you. I would like a little bit more upside on the back half of the drafts. I think this is a more safer floor play with those back picks. So it really, like, if we look at this roster in 6 months, Charbonnet could be the guy where you look back, you're like, man, that guy was a steal. And if that happens, you'll like this roster a lot. But you're going to give yourself, like, Young Hoku, he's a kicker. It's good. So, like, overall, I like what Reddit did with this draft. He kind of took what fell to him. So let's go there. So 1 second, we're going to go to that. I'm going to mark this off. So give me a second as I stall for time here. Sorry about that, folks. All right, let's go to Mr. Athletic Profile. Now, we got – interesting why it's not sharing that. That is weird. All right, let's try that again. I don't know why I did that. Sorry, folks. There it is. So this is Jamie Paraga, Terminator Division. We actually did Jamie's the other day, so I'm going to skip Jamie's. Sorry about that. And let's go to James Thompson, Captain Marvel Division. I apologize for that. This is really hard to read, so I'm going to do the best to just tell you what it is. We got Goff at quarterback, Bijan Robinson running back, A.J. Brown, your wide receiver run, Dallas Goedert, your tight end, and then it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, DK Metcalf, Cooper Kupp, Chris Godwin, Christian Watson, all your flex plays. So you could tell they went heavy with the wide receivers, incredibly heavy with the wide receivers. I really like DK. I think he's going to be really good. Cooper Kupp should be solid for you. Godwin, similar to Deontay Johnson, another guy's undervalued. Stafford, it's clear you punted your QB2. Stafford's going really late. So if you got him in the later rounds, I like that a lot. We're looking at upside in the back half of the draft. So we got Charbonnet, Adam Thielen, Algier, Brandon Cooks, Ray Larry McLeod, not a bad shot because he's competing for special teams work there. So I actually like that dart throw there. Darnell Mooney, another guy attached to a good offense. Ertz is going to be running routes the first half of the year. So as long as you're fine rolling in the second half, probably taking an L. The first half, you run it with it, and then you have Hunter to run it back. Overall, I like it. You got Tyler Bass as another kicker. So you kind of stockpiled a few good positions. Overall, this squad, I like it a little bit. It's a little heavy on wide receiver, but if the value falls to you, though, those guys can be good. I know we've exclusively kind of talked about like how running backs are significantly valued more than wide receivers. I don't necessarily view this. It's the volume running backs that are significantly valued more above wide receivers. If you're getting part-time running backs, then yeah, these wide receivers can easily outscore those guys. It's harder for wide receivers to hit that ceiling production, and that's what you're looking for in a format with 4,000 plus people, right? Like this is a massive tournament, and I know it's 12-team leagues. You got to get to the dance to get there. But overall, like with this roster, it's more like you see the floor there. You need Bijan to be that truly like RB1, take that step forward on this roster, because you have a lot of guys the production level you're getting. Like Chris Godwin's way too discounted. I really like him. Cooper Kupp is another guy. DK Metcalf. You got Amon-Ra. He's going to be a stud. So if you got those guys carrying you and a couple of these guys take a step forward, like Godwin did what he did in the past, or Cooper Kupp pushes Puka and is a little bit more closer to the 1A in that offense, then that's how this roster really takes a step forward. But overall, like if this is like a B roster, I like it. There's a few things I do a little bit differently, but overall, yeah. Hey, you can still do it. We have quite a lot to go through. I'm gonna try to get through these as fast as possible because I'm taking a lot of time with these. So we went way too long yesterday, so it's all good, Mike. Don't worry about it. If you want to shoot us a message afterwards, you can help me talk about it then. So I'm gonna go to our next roster here. So this one's from Bobby. It's aka Robert in the Oompa Loompas division. So let's talk about this really quick. Josh Allen, Saquon Barkley, Kyron Williams. You're like, hey, I'm not as bullish as Saquon Barkley in other formats. In this format, I like Barkley a lot because he's going to be involved in the passing game. He's going to get the running back touches, and he's very high floor play. In this format, I think he gets a bigger boost in more formats just because he scores all over the field, gives you those touches. Garrett Wilson, I'm going off the board wide receiver 11. Like, I find it hard for Garrett Wilson to fall below that on points per game basis, given his quarterback situation. The skill position players around him, it's the wide receiver room, tight end room, like there's nothing really there. So it's Garrett Wilson. He could really be the wide receiver one this year in fantasy. That would not shock me at all. So getting him in the 4th, like you like that value a lot. Brock Bowers is an upside shot. That's tight end 11. You kind of see how your draft played out. Overall, Bowers is really good. Kamara, we've been talking about him. The report came out where it's talking about, like, you see the metrics for him falling off. But the thing is, like, they have no one else really pushing him for touches. They have Jamal Williams. They have James Robinson. James Robinson is the ghost of his former self. Jamal Williams is never really that guy. He's a guy that does a few things for you. Can be like a goal line back of that nature, but he's not going to catch any passes or stuff like that. The one thing with Kendrick Miller and the injuries, if Kendrick Miller gets over the injury issues, which it seems like he has a really risky profile, might not happen. This is how Alvin Kamara sees another 18 touches per game and is a guy that's a volume guy for you. So on the 6, you know what you're getting there. Chris Godwin, just talked about him. He's undervalued. Will Levis, similar to Baker Mayfield, I don't like taking these guys that early. I would like to wait till the 10th round, but because overall you get Daniel Jones. I much prefer the shot on Daniel Jones, particularly with how the scoring rewards these rushing quarterbacks. Now with Daniel Jones, he could get benched, and that's kind of what you have to worry about with him. But overall, like, when these two play, I expect Daniel Jones to outscore Will Levis just with this format. But like Will Levis, it's not a bad value. I like the value. I just wish it would be a little bit later, but it's kind of how your draft goes. This QB 22, you go with that. What I like you did, though, is you stacked him with Calvin Ridley. So you paired those two together, and then you tripled it, and you went Tony Pollard. So you went on a Titans run here. You're like, hey, if I'm going to invest in an offense, let me get an offense in our value. What I really like is Jalen Warren in the 12th. That's about as late as I've seen Jalen Warren go. So that's really good value on Warren. You like what Warren could do. If he does overtake Najee in that backfield, which Arthur Smith does some weird things, he's going to be good. Like, you know, he's going to be good on a volume basis. So if he does that, you'll be happy with that. Hayden Hurst, I mean, it's the tight end for freaking Justin Herbert, right? Like, this is a guy you want. Tyler Conklin, if he gets those touchdowns, like I saw a stat come out today, he's basically in receptions, yards, he's really good. As far as like a back end tight end one, it's just the touchdown. He's like 30th in touchdowns of tight end. So if those touchdowns take forward for him, you'll get a tight end 1 at tight end 25. Like you like that or what? You get a top 5 kicker, Dicker. Kicker should be really good for you. Mike Williams, Quentin Johnson. Mike Williams is just, you don't know what's going to happen with his teams because he's coming back from his injury. He's on the pup. So like maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. But in the 17th round, like that's upside shot into a viable guy who's when healthy, he's averaged like 14 points per game in regular format. So he could be good for you. Quentin Johnson, it's just the similar situation, right? You're investing in offense and unknown. So if he could become the wide receiver 2, or God forbid the wide receiver 1 has Justin Herbert, you like that a lot. I don't expect that. But overall, it's not bad. And then you got Estime, a guy who should be an early down grinder in Denver. Duvernay, the return guy. Barrios, another return guy. Naheem Hines. You round it out with the return guys. I like the upside shots late. So it's all about how you kind of build your roster, put it together. With this roster and what you did, I maybe wouldn't have gone back-to-back those wide receivers in that range just because there's a lot of uncertainty with those guys, and I'm not sure what the upside is without special teams in this scoring format because you really want the volume guys who are just going to be chain movers. Like those guys are really beneficial in this format because the first down bonus and like the points on top of that, like those guys are really beneficial. So Mike Williams is more of a downfield threat. We don't know what we're going to get in QJ. So it could work out, but overall, like if those returners kind of carry you, like Devin Duvernay, Braxton Berrios, and Naheem Hines, you can flex those guys. It's going to offset the roster with the risk kind of in the middle drafts you took with taking Dicker there. Like I took a kicker there as well as that range, but overall, it's not bad. I like how this roster kind of worked out for you, and it's a pretty good roster. I have a little bit concerned of how you're going to fill out those flex spots, but like we talked about, if those return guys hit for you, that cancels that out, and then you're looking in. When you look back at this roster, like there's a path for this roster to be really good, and you could be pushing into the playoffs, be a difference-making team. Now you have a little bit issues with buys and stuff of that nature, but you know what? You'll just supplement the week where Tennessee has the bye week, so you move off those guys, you flip them around. Maybe you play Taysom Hill for a week, and you make it work. But overall, I like kind of how you interwoven. You took like solid guys that you get with the Godwins and Ridley, and then you really took the upside shots with like the Daniel Jones, the Jalen Warren, and those guys. So yeah, it's a roster I'd be pretty happy with. So. Well done, Robert. All right, so we got another one you guys are going to have to bear with me from. This is from Roger, so give me guys a second here. I'm going to roll through this one really quick. We got Patrick Mahomes, James Cook, Stephon Diggs, Trey McBride, Kyle Pitts. Love the 2 tight ends there. You're really investing heavily in the format. Those guys should be cooking for you. If Kyle Pitts does what you expect him to do, that is going to be a really fun 1-2 combo. Then we got Ramondre Stevenson, a guy that's going to be a volume back. I like Ramondre in this format. The Patriots clearly like him. Our fantasy community is really down on him. I think we should like him too. I think he's undervalued. And then you did another pick with Najee. So Najee and Stevenson's basically the same bet. You're making volume guys that you expect to be good, even though the offenses are kind of suspect, but you're still getting the volume. So if those offenses can take a step forward, that's how those guys really pay off for you. Evan Ingram, really discounted tight end. I actually like flexing him in that range. You got another guy who could be a top 5 tight end for you. So you could look at your roster and you have 3 top 5 tight ends. And if that's the case, you really have an edge over the rest of your field, right? The Pearsall pick's interesting. I don't know when he's going to play. If he's going to play, he's already dealing with injuries. So you might want to stash him and just hold him. It's probably not going to happen for him for a while. We get Kirk Cousins. I got Kirk Cousins as my heart. He's probably undervalued. I love what Kirk Cousins does. Kirk Cousins, he's just, well, you look at last year, the guy was a stud. So doing it again. Then you got Kami Fairbairn, a guy in the Texans offense that should be one of the better offenses of the league. That's the kicker we want. Those are the type of kickers we want in this format. So getting him a little bit cheaper, you like that. So overall, we go that. And then we round it out. We got Penix, who was probably the late dart throw, Spencer Rattler. You really went heavily on these quarterbacks. Jameis Winston, Jacoby Brissett. I don't know why you drafted all of these quarterbacks because they're taking up a majority of your roster. This looks more like a super flex roster or dynasty, which is like kind of what we want. In this format, I know we can't pick up those guys, but you're taking a lot of spots, particularly when you have like Ricky Pearsall on your starting lineup or, like a Najee Harris or Ramondre Stevenson. I like those guys, but sometimes you want to mix and match those guys. So when you have like a Shipley, you could flex him in there, Jerome Ford, Ade Mitchell, Luke McCaffrey. Deontay Johnson. Oh, yeah, you got Deontay. That's the guy that's going to be starting for you. Yeah, so you put Deontay in your starting lineup. It looks a lot better. So, yeah, Deontay, I like that pick. That kind of gives you a much higher floor and a guy who could really push to be a top 12 wide receiver this year. So, overall, like this build, I like this build. I just don't think you should have gone as quarterback heavy because those guys, like, they need injuries, and also there's no assurances they play. Like the Rattlers, the Jameis Winstons, the Jacoby Brissett. The issue with Brissett is he's already getting pushed by Drake May. He might not even start this year. So, he would need an injury. Same thing with Jameis Winston, a guy that's just like a backup who in this format, not really super beneficial because the legs aren't really there for him, right? So like Rattler, I kind of understand the upside on him, but personally, I would have gone to other upside that could like get into your starting line because you already have Patrick Mahomes, right? So if Mahomes goes down, your season's pretty much cooked, right? So I don't like investing that heavily when you have a high like top 1 draft pick that you have in Patrick Mahomes. Personally, I would orchestrate the roster a little bit differently. When you spend that premium capital, you kind of have to accept the risk with it and then go into their positions. Because I would either gone on wide receiver or running backs. I would just absolutely pepper those guys. But overall, like this roster's fun. Like it's a pretty good roster. That one thing I would change with the roster. So thanks for making it, Big Rig. We appreciate it. Overall, it's like a C plus. Like that's kind of where I'm at with that roster. If we fix those quarterbacks, I'd like a little bit more. So let's go down to Kevin's team, Dreamers FFL in the Crash Davis division. Now, you can see how they attacked it. I mean, it's possible, but, like, how long is he starting for there? Like, that's kind of, like, my issue with it. Like, he's going in as a projected starter, but he's already splitting reps with Drake May, which means that Drake May has a chance to start the season and you might get, like, 1 week or 2 with him. So that's the whole thing with Jacoby Brissett. I think we're banking on the assurance of him starting for a long time. I don't necessarily think that because Drake May is a good prospect. This is the one thing with Drake May. I think people are a little bit too overthinking it with him because he went to the Patriots. It's a whole new coaching staff. They completely revamped it. It's not the Bill Belichick era, right? So you're getting Drake May. And like with this roster, you want him to build that connection with his young receivers. Like we've already seen Jalen Polk. Like Drake May was out there and Jalen Polk were both out there with the starters today in camp. What does that tell you? Is they're trying to get those guys on the field. So they do. But like, it really comes down to how you view about these guys. And yeah, like I would expect it to be earlier. I just think Drake May is a special talent. And if he's showing it in camp already, like odds are he's going to get on the field sooner. Like the schedule is brutal, but like we kind of do this with quarterbacks. We overthink it. We always lean into the bye week. With these early round quarterbacks, the guys that go like top 3, like they get on the field earlier than that because the teams are like, particularly New England, they had a chance to trade back and get a first on top of it from New York. They're like, nope, we love Drake May. So that kind of tells us like, Jacoby Brissett's the more insurance. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, that's the whole point of it, right? So I think Brissett's the more insurance if May struggles. But if May shines early, like, they're going to give him the keys because they're like, all right, man, we took you early. You need to show it to us because it's not like you're taking like Jordan Love or those guys. You took them late in the first round, right? No, you took them 3rd overall. That tells you how they feel. So sorry, my daughter's screaming in the backfield. She's having a good time. It is what it is. So it's just, she has a lot of fun doing that. Personally, Jamie, I'm not comfortable starting Taysom Hill at quarterback in a super flex spot. Like I do it as kind of a desperation attempt because his weeks are really all over the place. He has some boom weeks it's really hard to project. So like the floor with Taysom Hill is super low, right? Because if he gives you like 2 rushes and he throws 6 passes, maybe he catches a pass, it's really hard for him to be a difference maker for you. So like I'm a little skeptical about like, I don't mind rostering Taysom Hill. I just don't know what the upside with is, and week to week it's really difficult for him. So just give me one. And it's really difficult. So overall, I'm a little bit more skeptical of him in this format. Now he gets the boost with rushing first downs of that nature. It's just you need him to have the big hole. And if they give it to Alvin Kamara, then that's kind of how it's going to be. So, I mean, it's possible you could do it. I just personally, I'm not the biggest fan of him in the world. But Dreamers, thanks for submitting this roster. We're going to like keep going as we talk about Drake May. We got Sam Laporta, Travis Kelce. Like you get the really good high end difference making tight ends. Jaden Daniels, like there's the upside shot getting him at 301. I was very lucky to get him to fall to the 4th. I was contemplating taking him in the 3rd. Like he's one of the last upside bets we get into the top 5 of the quarterbacks. Once you get past Daniels, it's guys that kind of have not necessarily cap ceilings, but they can't really push into that top 5. It's really, especially with this format and how it rewards rushing quarterbacks. These are the guys we want to target. And like why he took Drake May. I really like the Drake May pick where you do it when you go with Cousins in the 6th. Then you take the upside shot on a mobile rushing quarterback. Drake May, Bowen Nix, those guys. Russell Wilson in this format's really good. I don't think Russell Wilson's a good quarterback anymore, but in this format last year, he was top 8 in scoring. Like, so you want these kind of guys. So, like, personally, I'm not going to get Kirk Cousins and then stack him with, like, Bryce Young. Like, that really, because how does Bryce Young get on the field, right? You need a Cousins injury. That's the only way it works. With Drake May, what you're doing, like, you're shooting for an upside shot where he could actually overtake Kirk Cousins and be a guy you start in your lineup if it's a good matchup. So, when we're taking these shots later in the drafts, like you kind of want guys with multiple outs. And these rushing quarterbacks have more outs than these passing quarterbacks because passing quarterbacks, you need the volume. They got to hit the volume and they got to be really productive and efficient. Like you need to be Brock Purdy efficient, right? To get up in there. So I really like how this roster is structured. I think they did a really good job. Josh Jacobs is more than likely going to be a volume back. Not the level he was in Vegas, but still see volume for him. Rashad White, I know people love Bucky Irving, but it's Rashad White's backfield. He's going to be fine. Then we get Rashid Shaheed in 7th. Like that's Chef's kiss. As long as he's returning kicks and playing a role in that offense, he could be a top 5 overall guy for you in the summer. Zay Flowers should be a guy that takes a step forward year 2. We really like Zay Flowers. Chris Godwin, probably undervalued. You're talking wide receiver 36 here. Like, he's going to smash that. So, overall, I like that. Cole Kmet, really good tight end. I'm actually going to push it back. Sorry. Cole Kmet, I do not like Cole Kmet big. I think it's very difficult for a tight end for Cole Kmet to really get in there like this. Like, at least I get the upside shot with Taysom Hill. How does Cole Kmet work his way into being a starting guy for you? Because he's at best, he's 4th in targets in that offense. This doesn't include DeAndre Swift. Like Kmet's he's actually a fine NFL tight end. I think he gets a little too much hate. But when you have DJ Moore, you have Keenan Allen, when you have Romo Dunze, and then you have DeAndre Swift, who's a decent pass catcher running back, it's really hard to make the magic work in like for that many players. Somebody's going to suffer, and I think it's going to be Cole Kmet. I think he'll be running routes and he'll be doing this thing because they clearly like Cole Kmet. But man, when you have that much talent around him, the tight end can suffer. So I think Cole Kmet at tight end 17, like the value's fine, but I would rather just chase other guys. Cole Kmet's a guy personally I'm just not drafting because he's getting up too high and people are still holding on to what he was. And I just don't see him at there. Yeah, I like the Taysom Hill pick overall, though. Like this guy, you can kind of move around the field, play your tight end. You can flex him week to week. Overall, yeah, I don't mind it. Like if we're talking about like comparing Cole Kmet and Taysom Hill, like give me Taysom Hill over Cole Kmet. But at these draft spots, it's a little early. Yeah, like I much prefer like getting Drake May at the 12th. And then the upside shot on Xavier Gibson. The guy was scoring 20 points per game basically last year in this format without playing a role offensively. This is the thing for Gibson. He doesn't need to play a role offensively. He can just be that returner. And with the expected increase in returns and yards that these returners are going to get, if you have a guy like Gibson who's going to control the kick returns, control the punt returns, get all of those, these guys can be incredibly beneficial for you. So getting players like him in the 13th or a Dameon Pierce in the 14th who's could be the kick returner on that team, right? So you get a backup running back who has upside outs, getting on the field if Mixon gets injuries. He's still playing a role as the handcuff, right? And then you get the kick returning on top of it. So Pierce can be a guy you technically are flexing in your lineup. I really like those type of bets. Brendan Aubrey, kicker 1. It's a really good offense. They're going to score a ton of points. He's a good kicker. He was awesome last year. He should do the same next year. So I don't really care which top 5 kicker you have, whatever it is. If you have one of those guys there, I personally would not go kicker 1. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let the board fall. But overall, like, you get the upside of the kicker 1. It's really hard for the kickers to be difference makers in this format because it's all clustered together. The scoring's really, really close. From like kicker 1 and kicker 12, it's like 2 points per game difference. It's not that much. And even if you push it back farther than that, if the offense is good, that's all that really matters. So, but if you like the difference maker, go get him. I completely understand it. Jahan Dotson, I like it because you're stacking with Jaden Daniels, and there's upside for Jahan Dotson in this offense. I know everyone's kind of out on Jahan Dotson, but like with the Washington Commanders getting an upgraded quarterback, and believe me, it was an upgraded quarterback. It was a disaster last year with Sam Howell. Sam Howell was throwing the ball around the field, just not efficient. So like the volume was there, but it's the type of offense that really was just like volume that really didn't mean anything. It wasn't beneficial to those guys, so they can move forward. Elijah Mitchell, if CMC suffers an injury, he's going to smash his ADP. Audric Estime, we talk about that backfield as early down grinder. Greg Dulcich, it's Greg Dortch, excuse me, even better. Greg Dortch is a guy who could be a kick return, could be a punt return. Is expected to take a roll up in that offense as well. So Greg Dortch is a bet I really like because you're talking about a guy with multiple outs. And in round 19, this is what we're talking about. Rasheen Ali is Jeremy's favorite guy. Jeremy loves Rasheen Ali. He's been hyping him up all out season, so I know Jeremy would be super happy with that pick. Another guy you need an injury, but he's going to be the backup in offense. Is gonna have a ton of rushes available too, so he could be a guy you're playing. Luke McCaffrey, I like you're taking shots connected to your wide receivers like Jaden Daniels, the Washington quarterback. You take the shots there, and then you take another just a huge dart on Baki, the guy who's playing running back, who's like a defensive back, but like he was taking snaps in the for Detroit in camp, so it's like why not? So all right. So overall, I really like how Dreamers orchestrated this roster. I personally would not go Cole Kmet that early. I think that's very much a reach. The Kmet, Taysom Hill picks are not the ones I do not like. But overall, you're going to have some picks you don't like, right? Like you're kind of going to be forcing the guys. So we all get to make those picks like that. I have a couple picks like that in my draft too. I was just like, well, I kind of got to take this guy here. I don't like it. Like, I get it. Overall, this is a really well orchestrated roster. You went in with the build plan and you came away with that. This one gets like an A for it. I would be very happy with this roster. You took the upside shots late. You targeted the stack, which is very nice because if Daniels hits, it's going to raise the whole offense, right? So you kind of went after that. I would have liked to see a little bit of Kirk Cousins like stack in there, but overall, you know what? You go with it. It's good. Like this is a roster I like. And then Drake May hits we talk about, like you're cooking. So overall, a very fun roster from Dreamers. Well done with your draft. Now I like this from Brad. You don't know what you're gonna look at when you get these, so let's check it with me. Okay, all right, we're safe here. Brad Duff in the Willie Mays Hayes division here. As you can see, Breece Hall could be the RB1, a guy that's a true difference maker. So I like taking the running backs late, and if you're in the back half of your draft, going with a running back or a tight end or like the wide receiver one, getting one of those guys on your roster, because I know we talk about quarterbacks are super important. The quarterbacks twos are not really that important. So if you're missing out on the true, like the top, the top 5, top 7 quarterbacks, and then you're forced in that kind of the back half range, then it's like, you know what, you don't have to take quarterback because you see how this draft went for them. They got Jaden Daniels at 301. So you get Jamar Chase, if he's going to be like a wide receiver one for you, like a really different spectacular wide receiver, then that could happen this year. Burrow's healthy, like you love that. Jaden Daniels, we talked about him a bunch. I love Jaden Daniels. He's one of the last guys who can give you that truly elite ceiling in this format. George Kittle, just a guy that's undervalued. You know he's going to get volume. He's going to be efficient. I think George Kittle's been the most complete tight end in the NFL like the past decade. Kelsey's the guy that's continually put up stats, but the thing is, like, Kittle can do everything for you. He blocks, he can run routes, he's been super efficient. Now, he's been kind of stuck in a situation that really isn't that great for him, because remember, a few years ago, he was, like, basically led the league in yak as a tight end, and that's just really awesome, and you do that. But, yeah, you roll that, and Jamie's right when I was talking about George earlier. Yep, the wide receiver 3 in that offense, and I know people talk about Michael Wilson, but like there's upside for Dortch to pass Wilson, right? Because Dortch can actually earn targets and do that. We haven't fully seen that out of Wilson. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. But yeah, that late, I like it. We get Josh Jacobs, a guy that should be a volume back in this format. And the value's okay there. I don't mind it. David Njoku's one of the last tight ends. A tight end 10, like I really like that value you got there on David Njoku. That seems like he's almost too discounted. Then you went Cleveland again, getting Amari Cooper, a guy that had basically the best year of his career. Now, is it going to happen with Deshaun Watson? I don't know, but I think he's a good pick at that range. Like you're talking wide receiver 23. And then you come back around the turn, you get Calvin Ridley. Personally, between the two Tennessee Titans players, I think DeAndre Hopkins is better. His stats were better on like a per route basis and overall that. But like you're taking a shot connected to the guy you stacked him with. So I think you kind of went in with the plan. You're like, all right, I'm going to target Will Levis and whichever, wide receiver is available there. Calvin Ridley, take him. You roll with that. So that's kind of your stack. I like that you built that in with those two guys. So Will Levis in the 9th is a little bit better value. I can kind of get on board with that because you're talking QB 24. So the draft is like, it's like, all right, you got to take this guy or you got to take the late shots on the rushing quarterbacks of that nature. Now this is the thing. Let me see what you said, Jamie. Yeah. So, yep, there you go. You like that? Yeah. It's always nice to get the confirmation bias, right? When you're like, hey, that's the guy I took. I like it. Yeah, we all like that. It's funny. I was talking to somebody on Twitter, and they're like, oh, I'm glad you like my roster. And I was like, yeah, they're like, I was worried about those picks. Hey, Jared, thanks for joining us today on this lovely Friday. But getting back to the Xavier Gibson, I've already talked about Xavier enough. Him, like, he's one of the truly elite returner guys in the NFL. So he's going to more than likely could give you a boost. And he was already scoring almost 20 points per game in this format last year, right? So if he's getting more returns, he has more chance to break away runs and go for that. So as long as he holds on to that role, and I know it's a little risky with the returner, so I know we're talking about like Mims and Shaheed and those guys who could be in Dortch to like a lesser degree, guys that do special teams and also play a role in offense. Gibson's not that guy. He's a guy that's just going to dominate the return game. And in this format, like I like those guys because you can easily flex them. It's really not hard for those guys to put up 12 points per game in this format because you look at how this returning heavily favors the returners with the scoring format. So like even guys that don't have offensive role, like Gibson really doesn't, they can just be difference makers for you in this format. So 10th round, a little early, but like what we noticed with the returners as the drafts went on and on, like people were reaching more and more for those guys compared to the players you're putting them up against. Like I'm fine taking Gibson over like a Gus Edwards of that nature because Gus Edwards gets a boost in this format, but like he's never been a true volume back. And he's already dealing with an injury. I think Gus Edwards is a fine bet here. You're talking what, running back 35? Like that's fine. It's really kind of just like, I think he's more of a floor play. He's not going to be a targeter. That's not who Gus Edwards is. In this offense, if he can get, like he had a career high in touches across the board. Like he was heavily used. Now, if Dobbins is healthy, it's going to cut into it. It's with him and the injury. I have a struggle with betting on Edwards this early. If you could get Edwards in like the 15th round, I'd like it a little bit more. But in the 10th round, like I see what people see in him. It's a little too early for me. We talk about Lockett. As you could see, wide receiver 56 in the 12th. Wide receivers were going heavy at this point in the draft. So getting Lockett there, I personally prefer Douglas in the 15th to Lockett in the 12th, just based on how this draft went for you. But like Lockett's a guy that's going to push 100 targets. He might dip a little bit this year. Maybe he gets like 90. But in that offense, we've already seen camp reports come out. Geno's basically, they're talking he's like 80, 90% completion. They really haven't thrown any interceptions. He's been cooking. They're really taking what the defense is giving them, which is something that Seattle has not done in the past years. So with the new scheme in Ryan Grubb, I love how discounted all the Seattle options are. It's a really entry point into an offense that should be one of their offenses because they're installing a new defense over there too. So like that defense is going to take time. And with the skill position talent they have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, JSN, and then you have the running backs. You have a Noah Fant, who's a first-round tight end, who's a good player overall. Might not be a fantasy guy, but he's a good player overall. And then you get the two running backs we talk about, Walker and Charbonnet. Like it's all setting up for Geno Smith to kind of have a bounce back to the 2022 season he had where he was pushing like 19 points per game in this format. So overall, I like Lockett, that pick. That's a good pick. Justin Tucker, kicker 2, which means like I don't mind as soon as that kicker 1 goes, taking a kicker after that, totally fine with that. And then value and where he's going in the draft is totally fine. Minshew you're taking a QB3. It looks like all of the Russian quarterbacks were gone. So it's kind of the last shot at getting a guy who could potentially start. So I don't mind that. Demario Douglas as a guy I really like. I personally like Polk at cost compared to Douglas because he's a rookie and he's going to be on the field in 2 wide receiver sets. But like we know Douglas is a solid target earner. If Drake May takes a step forward, which is like what we're talking about, or Jacoby Brissett, it's better than what they had. So Douglas can be a viable guy for you. So I like getting him there. Theo Johnson, it's a bet on whoever. I don't care if it's Bellinger or Johnson, whichever guy you like more, right? In the offense, you're betting on the tight end, really bereft of receiving options outside Neighbors. I know people like Wan'Dale Robinson, but he's like the scam PPR guy. He's not going to give you those big boy routes, right? Outside of that, there's not much of that wide receiver room. So there's a pathway for Theo Johnson to be top 2 in targets on this team. And these are the tight ends we want to target. Now, can Daniel Jones sustain it? I don't know. That's the whole other issue, right? Because you have Drew Lock and all this fun stuff going on there. But in this late of the draft, I'm fine taking shots on them. We got Jahan Dotson. I talked about him a little bit. Wan'Dale Robinson is a guy who's going to get easy targets in this offense, like talked about. I don't mind investing multiple shots into the Giants, particularly late, because everyone's discounting this offense expects it to be bottom 5. What happens if it's similar to a couple of years ago where they were an efficient offense? Obviously, they don't have Saquon Barkley anymore, but they were an efficient offense. They did thing. Brian Daboll was scheming it up well. These guys could all beat their ADP, so don't mind that at all. Jawan Johnson, I guess he is on the pup list, so we'll see what happens with him. But if you're fine stashing him for a few weeks and rolling out Zach Ertz like as your backup there, totally fine. Don't mind that at all. Deontay Hardy is a return specialist in Baltimore, has a shot. And then Kenny Nwangu, love that pick because another guy that's going to be a really good kick returner. He's not going to be a punt returner, but he's a kick returner on that offense, and the kick returners are much more valuable just because you get so many more yards in kick return than you do punt returning. So I like the Kenny Nwango pick. He can give you over 1,000 kick return yards. You do the math on that. Maybe he gives you a little bit offensively too. That's how you get a guy that's viable and flex. And in the last pick, like, you can't. It's really hard to beat that value. So I like that pick for you. Well done, Brad. It looks like your team's going to be very competitive in the William Hayes division. I'll say that. Now let's go to Hulk Smash Matthew's team. Hulk Smash 0502 in the Pennywise division. Now we got Jamar Chase starting out. We talked about Jamar Chase a lot. I really like Jahmyr Gibbs. Running back 4 is a little steep, but I like Jahmyr Gibbs a lot. This is actually how my draft went with the 2 and 3. Jahmyr Gibbs, Kyron Williams. Jahmyr Gibbs, year 2, is going to take a step forward in volume. And you saw the second half of last year. He's basically top 3 like running backs when he took over, got past the injury. Really wasn't much competition for him there. So I expect that to continue on. Kyron Williams, he could regress 20%, like take 20% off. He'd still be a really good pick in the 3rd round. That's how good Kyron Williams was. So I'm not too worried about Kyron Williams. I think you're getting a good discount. And RB6, it doesn't seem like a discount, but it's a discount on what Kyron Williams did. The Tua pick worries me a little bit because we've talked about this a lot in the 4th round. Because if you see here in the draft, like, what's the difference between Tua and Matt Stafford? Like, there's not much of a difference between these guys. So spending 4th round capital as opposed to 8th round capital, like, you need Tua. What you really need Tua to do is push up to the 40 passing touchdowns, is what Stafford did a couple of years ago. It's just really hard I just struggle seeing Tua ever do that. Now, it's a really good offense. The position players are really good there. I struggle betting on these floor options. These guys are going to be like QB2s. Like we saw last year, Tua struggled. He led the league in passing, and he struggled from losing passing points. I'll get into the Roman Wilson pick and why I struggle betting on those guys, but it's the 20th round, and I'll talk about Pittsburgh here in a second. But Jalen Waddle, I like how you stack those two. Like Jalen Waddle's like undervalued, and you might be saying wide receiver 14. He's not being drafted. Like this is more drafting him at like kind of where you expect him to go. In most drafts, he's pushing into the 20s at wide receiver, where people are like they're fading him too much. He's really good. Like all the metrics tell us that Jalen Waddle is one of the really best 1B options in the NFL behind Tyreek Hill. Like it's a really fun offense. I like how you stack those two. So if you're going to go to him, you get Waddle there. You really go for that offense, and you support the guy you bet on. So I like doing that. Brock Bowers, we talked about. He gives the upside shot there. He could be the second option behind Devontae Adams. He's not going to pass Devontae Adams year 1. Like Devontae Adams is still an elite weapon, but he can step into 100 targets in year 1 and be beneficial for you. It's going to be all over the place because of the quarterbacks, but you get the targets, we go over there. Rashid Shaheed, 7th round, like that's just free money at that point. We've gone over this exclusive to FFU. I'm like, dude, draft Rashid Shaheed. I do not care. Draft him. Stafford, I much prefer Stafford in the 8th as the 2 in the 4th. The points per game, there's not much difference between the 2 of those guys. So getting the discount on Stafford, particularly in redraft, because like we don't have to worry about age concerns, right? With him aging out or retiring, you know what you're getting with Stafford. Chubb's an interesting pick because I don't know how Nick Chubb, he's just not human. He's not from this earth. He's built different, as they say. He's running on the sidelines right now, like at full speed. That's what they're saying. So who knows? At RB31, like I was completely out on Nick Chubb. I'm getting more interested in Nick Chubb. I will say that. I'm still not drafting him at RB31, but I'm getting more interested in Nick Chubb than I was before because we're getting glowing reports coming out about Nick Chubb. Basically, we're just saying like this guy, similar to like a Tiger Woods, is just like a different type of athlete and those things of nature. Like Tiger Woods had massive leg surgery, didn't matter. He still came back, did his thing. Nick Chubb could theoretically do it. Now, do I want to make that bet? Personally, I don't. That's not what I want to do. Yeah, but like that's 100%. Like if you're going to take upside shots on, in general, rookies are the best bets for upside shots because the unknown uncertainty they get pushed down. So we kind of know about these veteran players like DeAndre Hopkins. I like DeAndre Hopkins there. I think that's, really good value in DeAndre Hopkins. Eckler freaking worries me. I am terrified of Austin Eckler. Like with Brian Robinson, like they're already like they showed him being like more of a factor kind of in the receiving game. So this is my concern with Eckler. Like I don't know how Eckler pays off his ADP because people are trying to take him over Brian Robinson because they're talking about using him as kick returner. But like, is he really going to be the kick returner on that offense? If Eckler is the kick returner, then yes, 100% I'm on board with this pick. I don't mind it. I just don't trust it. Like I'm super skeptical because we saw last year the guy was significantly injured. He struggled, like all his metrics come down. So like, why would you put him as your kicker returner? Because you want a guy that's breaking tackles and stuff. Eckler was not doing that at all last year. So I wonder like if they really don't have a better option for the Commanders. If they don't, that probably speaks to the Commanders. But I really like the upside shot on Bo Nix. Like we talked about, you get the passing quarterbacks. The upside shot on the rushing quarterbacks at the 12th round. QB 29, like that's a good pick. Justin's kicker, you got your kicker one. Personally, I would rather like to kind of like stack my kickers the way you built this. Like, I want to get stacks, and one of the easiest way to get a stack in this format is to get the kicker attached to your quarterbacks. But like you took a guy that my issue with Tucker is he's just kind of a guy that's been top 5 in scoring overall. Not really going to be a difference maker. It's just hard for him to do that because of how like the Baltimore has kind of shifted their offense. They're not taking all these field goal attempts, like they're taking more 4th down attempts. Not quite as much as like Detroit is, but they're moving in that nature. So it's really hard. It's harder for Tucker to be the difference maker, but he's more of a floor player than anything else. You know he's going to be top 5. He's just a stud. He's been forever. He's just a turtle. Troy Franklin, a nice upside shot attached to Bo Nix. I like that. You're betting on the offense, and if he takes a step forward, like we talked about him being better than Matthew Stafford, entirely possible. Or hell, he could be better than Tua. Like, given the scoring in this format, it's entirely possible Bo Nix gives you more points per game. Now, is it likely? No, but it's possible. And we're talking middle, late rounds here. Noah Fant, you're just taking a tight end who has a role in an offense. I don't mind it at all. Really, really like the Jalen Polk pick here. I think Polk has the chance to be the wide receiver 1 in New England, and you're getting him in basically wide receiver 70. We've seen nonstop hype come out about Jalen Polk. We're seeing more people get into him, but like, you got, like, I'm just saying, like, get in now while you still can because the hype's going to rise. His value is going to take off, and he's already playing with the ones. Like, this is what you want to see from rookies, right? 2nd round rookie pick. He has a good profile. I know people are like, oh, he's a wide receiver 3 for the Huskies. Dude, they had 3. Like, they had the best wide receiver room in the NFL from college to the NFL last year. Like, they had 3 NFL quality guys. Like, that's really hard to do, and they were awesome with Penix. So, yeah, I am all aboard of that pick. Another bet on a guy who – it's really hard for rookie tight ends, so I'm a little less bullish on rookie tight ends, particularly outside of the truly elite, like the Brock Bowers. Like, even I like Sanat, but like it's just hard for these guys. So at least Sanders is expected to be the tight end 1 right out of the gate, so he has that going for him. And maybe it works with Bryce. He's a security check down blanket. I just don't know. That's what I'm worried about. Bucky Irving, a guy who's going to give you some return game in the backup. So if he has an injury to Rachaad White, God forbid, we don't want to see injuries. But if that happens, value takes off. Braylon Allen's an interesting bet. I don't know how he necessarily gets there without an injury because Breece Hall is really that dude. He's a special player. Now we'll talk about Roman Wilson for a bit. He's the slot guy for the Pittsburgh Steelers in an offense we expect to be low volume passing. That's going to be their league leaders in rushing attempts. It's going to be incredibly difficult because he needs to be on the field in 2 wide receiver sets. If he's not, which it sounds like he's not going to be, then how does he get those targets? The guy, if you're looking for a late Pittsburgh Steeler that you want to invest in, it's the tight end. It's Freiermuth. They're already moving him all around the field. Arthur Smith is great at maximizing his tight ends to use them in different ways. Now, he uses multiple guys, but if that consolidates around Freiermuth, he could be an absolute value. If Roman Wilson can get on the field in 2 wide receiver sets, I'm fine with it. I just don't expect it because he is your definition on a slot wide receiver. So the pick really perplexed me. And then the fact that they were like, hey, guess what? We're going to trade Deontay. And you look at that wide receiver core, it's like Calvin Austin. It's like the ghost of that, like all these guys that you're just like, man, that wide receiver room is rough. So maybe it works out for Roman Wilson. I know FF Rebel, I'm all over the place. Why am I playing his name? One of my at the FFU. Yeah, I'm in low blood sugar here. Sorry, folks. So give me a second here. I'm going to have a snack because my brain's not working. So excuse me. Yeah, one of our guys likes him a lot. And then we get to Dante Foreman. Andre Isovich, like Foreman, you're just taking a shot on a Cleveland backfield with the Chubb injury. I like how you kind of insulate yourself doing that. So yeah. And then Isovich, it's like, 22 rank. I don't mind that. So overall, good roster. Yeah. I mean, the difference is like Wilson's never really been a target earner in college. And Deontay is like a true high-end target earner. And so I think we kind of struggle when we do that comparison 1v1 because the thing is Deontay is like can play outside and he could play X wide receiver for you. That's not Roman Wilson. Roman Wilson's not doing that. So I'm just saying Roman Wilson has to pass multiple hurdles for me to be like, all right, I'm in on Roman Wilson. Like I need to see it. His profile is a late breakout. Well, he's a slot wide receiver. And in the Pittsburgh offense, like that's not someone that's really going to be beneficial because like if you think about Arthur Smith and what he's ran through the years in his time, if you could find me a target earner like that's been a slot guy in that offense, it's been really difficult. Like they just don't do that. Like that's not who they feature. They feature the outside X wide receiver. Or they feature the tight ends, right? That's kind of Arthur Smith's offense. It's a lot of play action stuff of that nature. So, I mean, maybe it all happens for Roman Wilson. The thing with Roman Wilson is he just needs to massively exceed what I expect from him. I'm in this 20th round. If you like your guy, I'm fine doing that. But if we're talking from dynasty and redraft perspective, like I just don't really want to invest in anyone else in that offense besides the running backs, the wide receiver, George Pickens, and Pat Freiermuth. Those are the only other ones. Yeah, like I think he can kind of do that. Like his calling card at Michigan was kind of like backyard football, kind of like Tyler Lockett. Like when a prey broke down, he was really good at that. But overall, like the way he got a lot of targets was just crossing intermediate stuff. That's really Mickey Mouse stuff. Like for your slot guys, you want them doing a little bit more than that. So that's my issue. Yeah, and I'm with you, Luke. Deontay's a stud. Like I don't know why he's so discounted. Of like we're getting him in the 9th, 10th round. Like you're getting him in the DeAndre Hopkins range. Like DeAndre Hopkins, like he has a pathway to 150 plus targets this year. Like he could be one of the top. And you're talking about, unlike Pittsburgh, Carolina is diving in and they're trying to feature an offense that like features him. So don't be surprised when Deontay is the guy that massively exceeds expectation. This is why we at FFU love him. I know Aaron loves Roman Wilson, so like I'll let Aaron speak to the issues of like why he likes him more of that. For me, I had question marks about Roman Wilson. I just don't think it's going to happen for him, but it's a 20th round. Like I don't really care about these picks. Like you just take your shots on guys you like. So I'm not going to critique anyone and be like, oh, you took Roman Wilson, terrible pick. No, it's the 20th round. I don't really care that much. Just overall, my issue with Roman Wilson when I speak from like a holistic standpoint, I just have issues with him. But overall, this is a fun roster. I like kind of what you did. You kind of like you insulated with Nick Chubb. You went with Foreman. You got like Stafford's a guy Sky that gives you the same production probably Tua is going to get. You take the upside shot on Knicks. When you look at this roster and you kind of zoom out, like this is what I like to do. Overall, this is a really fun roster. I'm a little skeptical with like the Chubb Eckler. If those guys work out for you and they are starters for you, then you'll be fine. But I like Rashid Shaheed. He's the upside. Like you take upside shots late. Like I like this draft overall. It's a pretty strong draft. Just a couple of the picks, I'm like, I don't see the issue with it, but you know, that's how every draft goes. So thanks for submitting that one, Matthew. Now let's go to Todd's, who said should definitely be unique. All right, Toddzilla. In the Julie the Cat Gaffney division, I don't know what that division is. So if anybody wants to help me out with what that division is from SFB, I don't recognize the game. So excuse me 1 second. Now, that's one of the later picks I've seen Jamar Chase go. So you get Anthony Richardson 107. He's the guy that could just be a stud. Oh, buddy, diversify. That is such heavily. I'm assuming he's your guy and you like him a lot. I would just say like bring that rostership down a little bit where you could root for him because this happened with like Treylon Burks a few years ago. I love Treylon Burks, but I had to cap my rostership percentage on. I'm like, I can't freaking give myself 100%. Like that will literally burn your rostership. So I would say just try to pivot off of him in a few places for other guys where you bring that rostership down a little bit because 72%. Oh boy, you're cooking with Roman Wilson. Oh, thank you. The Mighty Ducks. Ah, yes. The goalie. Okay. That makes so much sense. Yeah, he was my wide receiver one coming out. My issue was that I did not take into account is the fact that Tennessee tried to shoot Homer in the X position instead of realizing how he was where he's like more of a big slot, right? This is the issue with making the situations and teams where we love players, but even these round one guys, sometimes if they don't fit the scheme right or they're using the wrong way, they can bust. So, and we talked about the injuries with him. I know like even Matt Harmon said if Treylon Burks was used the right way, he could be 1,200, 1,400 yard guy, but they don't know how to use him in Tennessee. And now he's basically like falling out of favor there. So he needs to go somewhere else. Just kind of happens. Some guys get lost in the shuffle. This is why situation and coaching staff's really important for a lot of these guys, particularly wide receiver, because they need to get a field and they need to get used. Yeah, those Mighty Ducks too. Yep, I remember that. It was awesome. One of my favorites. I grew up on Mighty Ducks. I actually got the shirt in the other room. I should have been wearing it while I was doing this, but I got one for my wife, but it's too small, so now it's just hanging up. I was like, I need to return it. But let's get back to this roster. All right, so Jamar Chase, you know what you're getting out of Jamar Chase. He's going to be a true difference maker. I heard Justin Henry saying like he has no potential like to be the wide receiver one, and I was like, I don't know how you could potentially say that. Like this guy was one of the better prospects we've ever seen. Came in and literally just went lights out. Said T. Higgins, hold my beer, dog. Like I'm the wide receiver one here. Like this is so I get it. Like people are worried about Burrow and the injury or Chase, but like if you looked at the stats for Chase last year, he's switched to he's doing more short and underneath stuff, and that's easier targets for him to succeed. Similar to what we saw to CeeDee Lamb, where they kind of shifted and they finally just delved in the offense with him. I fully expect Cincinnati to like buy into what Jamar Chase is doing more, where it's like, all right, this is Jamar Chase's show. Everyone else is second best. Like Jamar Chase is the guy. So him and Burrow should have a really fun year. I still prefer Jefferson to him, but like I'm not going to fight anybody if they want to go chase over Jefferson. Like I get it because like his quarterback is better. It's really hard to argue JJ McCarthy or Sam Darnold better than Joe Burrow, right? So that's the whole issue. But Jamar Chase is a stud. Enough about him. We all know about him. Mark Andrews, tight end 4. Love that. 3rd round. You know what you're getting out of Mark Andrews. As long as he's healthy, what's everything we get out of him is healthy, then he's going to be a stud. That's just what Mark Andrews does. It's going to be him and Zay in that offense. Really, everyone else I'm not too worried about. Well, obviously Henry from the return, like the rushing perspective, but from the receiving games, like those are the guys I want. We got Michael Pittman, who's a guy that you stacked. I like waiting on the 5th a little bit. This is something we've seen a lot of people with Pittman. People are down on him because of what Richardson does, but it's an RPO offense with Richardson. Pittman is going to be the first read on a majority of looks. So the ceiling might not be there with Pittman, but the floor is incredibly high. I think we're kind of discounting him a little too much now, where people are like, oh, no, Pittman's going to suffer. I'm like, dude, he just saw 150-plus target. Like, he's good. Like, he's a good NFL wide receiver. He's the guy who thrives in the short and underneath, like we talked about with Deontay. That's where Pittman's bread and butter is. Like, he does a curl route. It's like, it's money. Neighbors is the pure upside shot. So Neighbors in the 6th round, wide receiver 23. I struggle with it, but like you got to bet on the talent of Malik Neighbors. Like we talked about with Jamar Chase, he's one of the better prospects we've seen the past decade at the wide receiver position. It's going to be up and down with Malik Neighbors, just based on who his quarterback is. And Daniel Jones, we've never seen him have a wide receiver get over 800 yards in a season. Darius Slayton's the most, like 775. But the difference between Malik Neighbors and everyone else who's been a wide receiver, pouring out for Kenny Galladay, it's just like it's not the same. I think he can give you 1,000 yards. I don't think the ceiling's there, but like where he's going to give you 1,500 yards as a rookie, like that requires a special set of circumstances. Like you need a quarterback capable of supporting that who's not going to be a rushing quarterback. Daniel Jones is a rushing quarterback. He's just not that good. So, but like at wide receiver 23, I'm fine throwing the dart on Neighbors. Like he's so good. We're kind of like we fade these guys a little too much. Similar to Romo Dunze, it's a little bit different. It's more target competition than anything else, right? People worry about that. I like to buy into the wide receivers when they're giving the discount, particularly these high-profile elite wide receivers. So Neighbors and those guys. Depends on the wide receivers. So it depends on who's available. Give me 1 second. I got somebody joining me here, so let's pop them up. What up, Etsy?
What's going on, man? On lunch, and I saw you were still doing this, so I was like, let me get in and talk a little bit about some Scott Fishbowl rosters with you.
Heck yeah, man. So, all right. So we're kind of talking about where they took Neighbors in the 6th and they didn't take their QB2. Would you take a quarterback here? I told them it was for me. It's just basically, it depends on who is on the board at quarterback. But if you're looking in the 6th round and you have Pittman as your wide receiver 2, are you targeting a quarterback in the 6th round or are you kind of pushing it like this guy did?
Well, I mean, look at that as roster. I'm targeting the quarterback somewhere. So, I mean, doesn't necessarily have to be the 6th, but I would have went after Bryce in like the 11th. I would have got Daniel Jones in maybe the 10th or something. Mm-hmm. Only because I tried this approach of like not going heavy quarterback last year. And granted, scoring's different and stuff like that. But man, in the super flex, the quarterbacks get you something, so compared to the later guys, right? So maybe not over Neighbors. I mean, training camp hype's coming around. You're seeing Neighbors doing some good things, and you're seeing like, okay, yeah, he's gonna be good. But Neighbors is a dynasty pick. I don't know how I feel about him in redraft right now. So with that being said, I would have definitely targeted a quarterback. I mean, he could have probably got, just thinking about the board when I was looking at it, you could have got maybe a Kirk Cousins there, maybe Lawrence, depending on how crazy it goes, so some guys could have been there where I think you could have definitely got better opportunity when it comes to actual in-season play. Over Neighbors at that super flex spot. I mean, you're probably in a flex spot, but still, yeah, I looking at the roster, I get it. He's targeting some guys that hopefully can do some work, but like Braden Allen, I mean, with Breece Hall there, I don't see Braden Allen getting the field. Tank Bigsby, you're hoping he gets in the end zone, later on. Sherman, I mean, Sherman, sure. I was high on Sherman when he came out, but he hasn't done anything. So I definitely would have targeted a quarterback somewhere. But if everyone hits, by all means, this could be a championship roster. So, sorry, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. I think with the QB2s in the Superflex spot, the thing like we kind of struggle with from this scoring is like the scoring really evens out for these back end quarterbacks. Is like they're not going to be difference makers for you. So this is what Todd I think he realized that and why he punted the position because you're really betting on Anthony Richardson. You're like, all right, cool, there's my difference maker. The quarterbacks must have gone because that was QB6 off the board, basically. Yeah. Like that makes sense, right? Because everyone's quarterback. Then you get to these other guys, you're like, I could just flex other guys on my super flex spot. So like Gibson's going to be a returner. Tyrone Tracy's going to be a returner. Charbonnet could be a guy that I personally think is going to push Walker for more work. He could be a guy that flexes for you. So when you look at the scoring, I don't think we need to we don't need to shoehorn the QB2 or the QB3s. If you're able to get guys like we talk about DeAndre Hopkins or Stephon Diggs, like those guys you could flex easily and put in a super flex spot. So overall, I don't actually mind going the opposite where you're zigging when everyone else is zagging, right? Because you're realizing, in particular, he loves the running back score. And that's why he went so heavy with the running backs, right? Like DJ Dallas is going to be a returner. Yeah. Like that's the thing. I think that's what we all are accustomed to with our super flex drafts is we have to get our quarterback right. But in just this 1 year window, I actually don't mind diving into this. But this is why if you're going to go for that late quarterback, I want the rushers because I want the guys at the scoring format reward. So I want the guys who give you the shot because if we're getting back in QB2 production, that's super replaceable. So you could probably find a week where you're starting DJ Dallas if he's returning. Like he'll give you some more production. So I get what Todd's doing here. It's just I think you have to be comfortable punting the position, and the majority of us are not. Like we get panicked, we get worried. We're like, this is terrifying.
No, 100%. I think beyond that though, you also have to think this is a big league. It's not just your 12 team in your divisions, right? This is a league you're going against 30. I don't know how many people are in it. 30 over 3,500, I think.
Yeah, it's like 4,000.
Yeah, so you also have to think about the bye week, right? So you're already giving up a position spot when Anthony Richardson goes on a bye week that you don't even have anyone to plug in there. So let's just say Anthony Richardson's average is 15 points per game. In that certain week, you're already losing on 15 points. And in a competition like this where everything matters, like every single point you can scrape matters, that's already a week where you're already going down into it because you don't have someone in that spot. So I think beyond just that super flex, you make a great point in the super flex where you can, let's say, punt that quarterback position. Yes. But I still think you want a guy, even if it's someone, let's just say, Will Levis, Bo Nix, even like those guys there that you could have got in round 15, 16, maybe. Those are guys that's like, I don't plan to start them in my super flex position, maybe, but I do want that just to have that bye week filler to come in and bring in 10 points, to just have that in there for the quarterback position. So that's where it comes into, it's a chess game, right? Every week we're going to be going in. Do you want to start that super flex quarterback or do you want to go in with the DeAndre Hopkins, who might be the wide receiver one in Tennessee, and put him in there, right? And have more upside in that sense too. So the super flex position is not necessarily the worry, but it is that worry of, okay, where am I looking at when Anthony Richardson's on a bye week? Is this a must-win week for me that I have to be like, okay, I'm on the fence and this can actually push me over or push me further back? So
yeah, because and on top of that, Anthony Richardson, I think, is week 14. Is the bye week. That's playoffs on top of you. I'm going to share this tab, and it's going to show you his division. So this is the Julie the Cat Gaffney division. I'm looking at the quarterback values, and there was Geno Smith was available in the 11th. Will Levis was available. Russell Wilson was available. So, the quarterbacks got pushed a little almost too far in this format where most of those guys are gone. I think the way, this one does it, and I actually got to switch the tab back to the other one, but – yeah, I think instead of the Gus Edwards pick, I would take whichever quarterback I liked at that spot. And I would feel a lot more comfortable because to your point, you're taking a 0. And I don't want to take a 0 at the quarterback position because you have to start a quarterback in that one quarterback spot. That's the one, you could, Dan's 100% right. You could have gone Fields. You could have gone any one of those guys. And I think you'd probably feel better about this. But overall, I think his strategy was he didn't want to force it. I just think maybe he'll pick up somebody that he thinks is going to start, and maybe he'll drop a Travion Williams, right? You know what I mean? These backup running backs. But I like the zigging aspect of what he did. But I'm with you. I would find myself to have another quarterback I could at least play.
Rattler's probably on your waiver wire, so go get Rattler because there's opportunity he could be a starter by week 14. So
there's a ton of these guys. I'm with you. That's kind of my one issue, but he's right. It's going to be unique because most people are not. They don't have the huevos to really pull this off and go for it. They're screw it. I'm not taking a quarterback too. I don't care. We'll see how it works out for him. I know Todd's a pretty smart guy when he talks about fantasy football, so I think he knows what he's doing. It's just, he's fine accepting the risk, and that's where ooh.
And that's the biggest thing too. Not to mention had to worry about the injury. So I mean, it with every position, for me, I at least want two at every position. I mean, he even had Mark Andrews as his only tight end. At least want two
Yeah.
because if injury happens, well, you just took that completely out, and now you're screwed
Mhm.
the rest of the way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we don't want injuries for anyone, but they happen, and if it does, then yeah, you're just out that position in general. So
100%. You just have to be like, yeah, like I think he went a little bit too far with the running backs. I think he just wanted to get as many as he possibly could to kind of just dominate the market with all of those guys because a lot of these guys are going to be available in most leagues. Like most people didn't draft Trey Sermon, most people didn't draft Bigsby. A lot of people took Dallas, but Trayvon Williams, stuff like that. So I think it's an interesting strategy, and it's always fun. This is what I like about Scott Fishbowl is we get these unique strategies in general of people that are like, you know what, I'm going to do something different. So I recommend him for like going for it. We'll see how it works out. It's definitely like you're diving into the risk, and when you're diving into the risk, like you could thrive or you could burn at the stake. So we'll see.
Win your division. So as long as he wins his division, he's cool. So
yeah, because I think once you get to the playoffs and stuff, like the people outside of playoffs can't make moves. They can't make waiver moves anyways.
Right.
So you're really only competing with like a select few people. So there's a pathway for it to work out. But yeah, you just have to survive, and that's kind of everybody has to get lucky in this format. But let's move over to Weapon X20, the Cole Trickle division. Tell me what you think about this roster and how they constructed it and like what you liked, what you see.
I actually really like this roster. Bryce Young was one of my targets. I need to double check. I'm pretty sure I didn't get Bryce Young, but that was one of my targets for sure. So I love that pick. CJ Stroud, I'm all over him, so that's great. And then you also paired him up with Tank Dell, which is also amazing. Devontae Smith, Debo, all they can, honestly be kick returners potentially. Taylor scares me just because you have Anthony Richardson, but still, if he's back into norm, that could be an RB1. Laporta, great pick. Hunter Henry, I love that pick. I think he will do work in the Scott Fishbowl. Definitely a target for me as well. I didn't get him, but definitely one of my targets. But also the running backs and Tony Pollard and Brian Robinson. I think Brian Robinson was heavily slept on. People think, Eckler's going to come in and do the work. Brian Robinson could take that work. He could be the workhorse back for them. And, you have Eckler on third down still to maybe get to, if they're third and 10, just to get the pass catching. But other than that, I think Brian Robinson is going to get majority of that. Same with Pollard. I know people love Tyjae Spears, but Pollard was actually more efficient when he wasn't necessarily just the one. So that could be a huge still there as well. Tucker, Sanders, great kickers there. Trey Tucker. I mean, I love everything about this pick. Cortland Sutton. That's sneaky. I'm a Troy Franklin guy, as you know. I like Marvin Mims as well. So Sutton maybe, could be there as well. And Quentin Johnson, that was actually one of my targets too, just because I don't feel, I know it's a new regime in LA, but I don't feel they're just going to be like, we're just going to throw this this first round draft pick out the window now. You know what I mean? So he's definitely someone that late, that could be huge value. Same with Adam Thielen. I know they brought in a lot of weapons there, but Adam Thielen was Bryce Young's favorite target last year. So this could be something where it's like that chemistry is not necessarily going away. So this is an all-around good build. It could definitely do some great things for it, especially Ty Chandler. I just saw that too. That's good too. I like this build. Nice build.
Yeah, like Ty Chandler I think he's more or less going to be splitting with Aaron Jones. I think that's the uncomfortable thing with Aaron Jones is like we have to worry about. But yeah, like these running backs you got, they're all Brian Robinson, I expect to get the majority of work, but like Pollard's going to be splitting work, Ty Chandler's going to be splitting work, so they're all kind of discounted a little bit. Yeah. Obviously, John Taylor's going to see some of the most volume you'll see of any running back in the NFL, so he's a really good pick based on the scoring. So yeah, overall, it's a fun build. You managed to stack a few of your pieces, like you got Purdy, Debo, like we talked about, CJ Stroud, Tank Dell, and those guys. Like you really dove into what it rewarded, and then the late pick on like the kicker too. I actually like getting another kicker. It's not an NFL because you could start as many as you want, but like going him and then Trey Tucker and like Michael Wilson, like it's an upside shot with why am I blanking on his name? The quarterback in Arizona. Like you get the guy that could be the wide receiver too. And I know we're hyping up Dortch because he's a special team and stuff, but like there's a real pathway for Michael Wilson to be a quality NFL wide receiver. And if he's that, he's going to absolutely smash getting him in the 20th round. So yeah, you took shots on guys that you liked and the community's a little down on, but for sure it could work on you. I think overall it's a good build and I'd be happy with this roster personally.
And I loved Mike Wilson coming out last year. His biggest knock was injuries, and he had to deal with that in the NFL too. But if he's on the field, he's a solid wide receiver. And I think people are, Marvin Harrison is the talk of the town, right? Which rightfully so. He's a great prospect. But if he is everything that we think he's going to be at this next level, that means defenses are going to zone in on him. That means defenses, you're going to see some double coverage go on him. You're going to see people specifically target him. So what does that mean? You had Trey McBride too, so yeah, they're going to go after him as well. But then Michael Wilson could have all these open looks that no one was even prepared for, and next thing you know, he has an 800-yard season because of all those open looks. So
Yeah,
that could
he's
be a
going to
good
be.
pick.
I think he's more than likely the wide receiver 2 on that team, and
Yeah.
that means he's on the field in the 2 wide receiver sets, and that's what we always want to see. And we've seen
Right.
Kyler support multiple guys, so like I think Kyler's capable. It's really up to Michael Wilson to show that he can like take a step forward from year one because he was solid as a rookie, right? So like take a step forward and go there. Yeah, overall, this is like that's a good build. I'd be happy with this one. Let's go to the wop wop from Shane Banger, the Princess Mononoke division. If you guys don't know Princess Mononoke, it's like an old movie that people love for anime. You should check it out. It's one of the classics. But anyways, we are going to talk about this division, and they really went with some bangers early and often. Another guy took Laporta. Jalen Hurts, 103. It's really hard to hate on Jalen Hurts there. Henry and Achane, I'm in on both of those guys in the format. I think Achane's he's one of the upside shots to give you potentially RB1. Like Henry's going to be a stud. He put up 29 points per game a couple years ago. Njoku, Malik Neighbors, another guy taking the shots. How do you feel about Watson in the QB? Like that's QB 20 at pick 7. And then he stacks him with Derek Carr as like the backup there. Yeah. Would you be comfortable going like the Watson Derek Carr as your QB2, QB3 in this format? Is that something you'd be okay with?
Yeah, I mean, Carr, I know people hate on Carr, but reality is, Carr, he's thrown 4,000-yard season, so he could definitely do it. They got some good wide receivers out there, so Carr could be it, and like I mentioned, Rattler's probably on the waiver, so just be aware if it's not working out and you're seeing the telltale signs fairly early, go target Spencer Rattler, drop Anthony, go get Spencer Rattler. Watson, we're going to talk about fantasy football. What he's done outside, that's a whole different discussion, right? For fantasy football, if Watson is back to his norm, this guy could be a league winner. We've seen him be a top 5 quarterback in the league for fantasy football. He has that upside to be that kind of prospect. So that at QB 20 essentially could be a huge steal for you because of that. And I know people are mad like, oh, we're not drafting him because of what he's done. I get it. I'm not. Do you? But at the end of the day, I want to compete. And if I'm getting a quarterback that has top 5 potential at QB 20, I'll take that all day. Because it's just something that at the end of the day, this is a game that I'm just watching the football. Like what's going on legally outside, that's its own thing. And guess what? If NFL didn't want him, they wouldn't have him in the league. But he's there, so he has potential to compete. He can go there and do that. I absolutely love that. And you talk about rushing upside. We've seen Watson have that rushing upside as well. So that could be a huge pick for him, and definitely if you have Hurts there, I mean, you have Watson and Hurts potentially as 2 potential top 5 quarterbacks. I love that pick. And the running backs, I think these running backs are great too. I mean, we already talked about Pollard and Robinson. You brought up Achane Henry. Now though, I know Zeke is it, but let's be real, Zeke is a lot slower. Dallo may have that explosiveness, and Dallo could fit into that role of what Tony Pollard was with Zeke a couple years back. Just less efficiency, but because Zeke is wearing the defense down to just inch by inch by inch, and then Dallo comes in and has a big play. So that's great there. In our chat, we were talking about Darius Davis a lot later as well. Solid pick there too. So this is a very nice build. I would have maybe went a little bit different on some of the wide receivers. Not bad, Kirk. I think Kirk could get a lot of work, in the slot. Hopkins, we already talked about him a little bit. We talked about Neighbors against Sutton. Cooks, hopefully Cooks bounces back. He had a pretty mediocre year last year, so if he bounces back, that could be huge as well. I like the tight ends though too. Actually, look at Kate Ollie and Noah Fant. I think people are sleeping on Noah Fant. I think he has a lot of upside. Yeah,
I like Fant a lot in best ball just because you don't know when he's gonna have those boom weeks.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit harder in managed leagues to know when to play him because similar to when you're the fourth, similar to Dalton Schultz with Houston, when you're the 4th option in an offense, it's just difficult to play those guys. So that's my concern with him. If this was best ball, I would like that pick a lot more. But yeah, Noah Fant's a good NFL quality tight end. There'll be weeks for him. And say if David Njoku goes down, you could still put him in at your tight end spot. It's not going to kill you. You're not going to get David Njoku production, but I can give you some. And then he attacked the returners. Darius Davis, he's going to be a guy that's going to be returning both. Anthony Gould could be the kick and punt returner. He's the dynamic guy at Oregon State. He could do that. And then Deontay Howard is a kick returner in Baltimore. So you took upside shots on returners, and I really like doing that personally. I think there's a lot of upside in those guys. And he got Jake Elliott really late in the 24. That kind of surprised me because Philly's going to be one of the better offenses in the NFL, right? So you get a good kicker and one of the better offenses. I think this draft is pretty well structured from an overall perspective. I'd change a few of these picks, but like overall, it's really hard to argue because Kirk and Hopkins are more like they're more floor plays. I think Hopkins has more ceiling, but like you've seen Kirk do his thing. If Watson hits, that's the big if. Like that's the thing that takes you over the edge. And if he hits the 7th round, then like you're cooking with gas, as they say, and then you're gonna be really happy with this team because. Yeah, I'm with you. I think Cooks has shown us his better days. Like he only put up 14% target share last year. I think he's kind of on his win rate out of the week. So maybe it happens with Cooks, but I don't see it.
I just don't see with his wide receiver room. I don't see. I mean, outside of like the returners in those last 3, I don't see any of them necessarily being consistently giving him 10+ weeks. Like I think you're gonna have boom and bust with them just because Malik Neighbors with his quarterback. It is Daniel Jones. If Daniel Jones is hitting with him, then sure. Hopkins, they brought in Calvin Ridley, so I don't think Hopkins gonna get the same targets as he was, last year with Levis as well. Christian Kirk, I like it, but they also brought in 2 field stretchers. I know Kirk will probably be in the slot a lot more, but again, I think that's gonna be more boom or bust. So the wide receiver room scare me a little bit because I don't feel he took Malik Neighbors, who is going to be the wide receiver 1, but as a rookie, I don't know how consistent his points per game will be, and that's what scares me when it comes to having that wide receiver.
Yeah, I think Kirk's more forward play. I think Hopkins gives you more potential on ceiling because Callahan comes over and they're going to be in one of the more pass-heavy offenses in the NFL. So we'll see if that works out and that does come to fruition because then you could support multiple players because Tennessee hasn't done that in years. They haven't been able to support multiple cast catchers in freaking forever, right? So if they do that, it works out. And then what I like about this format is you can just put those returners in your flex spots and you don't have to really worry about it. So yeah, maybe we switch a few of the wide receivers, but overall, like where the strength in this team lies. It's your tight ends, it's the elite rushers, and it's like Jalen Hurts, right? And then the upside shot is Watson. If he hits, you'll feel pretty good. You really need like Brian Robinson to take a step forward and be the guy that we hope he is, or Tony Pollard, or one of these guys in that Paisley pick 8 through pick 15-ish range. Like you need some of those guys to take a massive step forward to kind of just insulate the floor with your roster so that these returners can kind of do their thing. And I think if that happens, then you'll be very happy with this roster. But like we said with all these teams, like there's a lot of mystery. We don't know how this all goes. If Watson takes a step forward, that entire offense. So then he's got Njoku, right? That's going to help Njoku, and then you go from there. So like, there's ways for this roster to work. It's a pretty solid roster. I would not be like disappointed if this was my roster, but overall, I'd be happy with it. Like, you know what I mean? It's a lot of these rosters we see kind of similar builds. So it was nice seeing Todd's build because it was just completely different from anything else like we see. Because most people are going to give you like 3 quarterbacks like this. This one's interesting because they punted running back pretty heavily in this one. So let's talk about Gabriel's division. The Rittery 7-9, Uncle Rico, the Napoleon Dynamite division. All right, so this one's pretty interesting because you get Bijan and then you're like, forget the running backs. I'm going every other position. And we've heard multiple people, kind of smart people in the industry, talk about that. They're like, if I get my elite running back, I'm just going to punt it. And this is kind of what they did, right? They took Mostert late. Naheem Hines, the returner, Zach Charbonnet. But outside of that, it's just wide receiver heavy, whereas every potential wide receiver. How would you feel if this was your roster? Like, you orchestrated, you look at your draft looking back, like, all right, this is my roster. Are you happy with this happy team that they built?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, my objective going into the draft, this isn't what I did. I wanted to get Bijan and Brees. I was trying to get those 2 locked in there. I did not. Someone got Brees before, and then I was like, I'm not getting Bijan. I went somewhere else. I went with Mahomes. But with this roster, I like it. It's you punt the running back, but Raheem Mostert, man, what he's been able to do in Miami with McDaniels is something else, man. I know people are like, he's 32. McDaniels is doing it right. He understands how to keep his running backs fresh, if you will. And that's why Raheem Mostert's been able to be healthy with them. So that's in a sense a home run play. If you're telling me Raheem Mostert's healthy all season and you have Bijan Robinson, these are 2 guys that can get to work and do some work there. Nice. I love that. Good pick, Mike. Yes. That's what I wanted to do in my team. Captain Barbosa just screwed that up. Thanks, guys. But no, I love that. The quarterback, Jaden Daniels as your QB1 and Herbert. I do like that, but I just don't know what that's gonna be for Scott Fish. I don't think he's gonna be a heavy passer this year. I could be completely wrong. I think this is gonna be a heavy running team, and the running backs are gonna be annoying. Granted, I like them. I'm getting Kamani Vidal. I'm getting, Gus Edwards, JK if you even have it, but JK could be on the waivers too, just because people have been scared about him. But Jared Patterson, I know, is getting some buzz now too. But yeah, I do like the quarterbacks in general. I just don't feel strongly about them and Scott Fish. Mark Andrews, elite. Devontae Adams, he's gonna be an alpha, man. He's gonna have 1,000-yard receiver, so great. We've talked about Neighbors Dell. Keenan Allen, I think that was someone that people have kind of slid on their radars just because Odunje's the fresh hot take. But even Odunje's been saying, I'm excited because I get to learn from Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, right? Like I know there's expectations for him to come in, but I wouldn't be surprised if he isn't necessarily used as much as we might think he is, because they have two veterans like Keenan and DJ, and then next year is the year you want to draft Odunze, right? Matt McConkey, you pair him up with Herbert, though. If Herbert's getting the ball, it's very likely it could be Lad McConkey there because he fits that short underneath route, similar to what Roman Wilson was for Harborough at Michigan, right? So that could be great. Khalil Shakir, honestly, the wide receiver one room, we think it's Coleman, but that's up in debate for Buffalo. And it could be Shakir, but also Shakir could get some good return yards there too. So Wicks, I love. Dortch, great returner. Khalif Raymond, possible returner, but also a sleepier guy that can give you some points. Juwan Johnson is nice if he's healthy. I know he's already battled some injury during this offseason, but we also seen him have a top 10 season. So that late of a pick for a tight end 28, that could be heavy for you in that kind of league. So good build. I'm not mad at him putting the running back position, because I felt with him getting Raheem, that's a solid RB2. Yeah, well, he was top 6, top 5 running back last year.
He was like RB2 last year, I think.
Yeah, so even better. So I mean, there you go. And I agree with you that I think Charbonnet is more accumulated to the offense. They understand a little bit more of what he needs to do. I think we're gonna see him get more opportunity this year. So that's also good. Naheem Hines, that's I'm not that big on that. So that is what it is. But I do like Bijan and Raheem. I don't think with the term punt, I get it. He waited a long time, but getting Raheem as your RB2, I think was a solid move.
Ooh, yeah, we finally got Jamie's breaking down here. I've not seen it. I expected it. This is what we expected too. We got the bag, baby. So yeah, that's gonna be fun. We're gonna hear Twitter talking how much they hate Tua getting that and all the fun stuff because I don't think he's that good. But overall, you knew it was gonna happen. Once they passed the draft, they drafted him. But I think for me with these quarterbacks, and we've already heard Roman talk about Herbert, they were surprised how athletic and mobile he is. Yeah. So with Greg Roman and how he's used his quarterbacks, Herbert's going to run more. Like, it just is what it is. Where they use the play action, they get him out like similar to Kaepernick. He's not Lamar Jackson, like he's not that guy. But Roman wants his quarterbacks to rush and be evasive. So like he might throw a little bit less, but he's talked about trying to keep them balanced. They're going to run more. And Jaden Daniels, you're just diving into the scoring and how it rewards rushing quarterbacks. So I think that's what they did, and that's why they took Fields late, right? Because they're like, if Fields plays, he's going to smash. Like, he could be that quarterback to this. So overall, I'm with you. And with these wide receivers, I would not take it all these wide receivers, but you could tell we're in round 8, and he barely got through 30 wide receivers. So you could tell the draft was pushing these wide receivers. So he's like, screw it. If you guys are going to give me all the wide receivers, I'll just take all the wide receivers because what's nice about the scoring, you only got to start one running back, start one wide receiver, and one tight end is just a bunch of flex spots. So if you could do that, then and I'm with Dan on that. The thing with Hines, I expect him to be a returner, and they've kind of talked about him using that. If he is the returner, which is a big if, we don't know with a lot of these returners, that's how he gets on the field for you. Like, he could have a minimum role on offense, but if he's the kick returner, he's going to be a guy you could flex and play just based on how those yards score. So, if that happens, which it's a big if, we don't know. But if it does, then you have a viable guy for you. And I think that's the kind of thing that would really sit out to me to look at scoring. It's like, dude, get all the potential returners possible because, like Greg Dortch, I would not be shocked he outscores Ontavian Wicks. Would not shock me to see him outscore like Zach Charbonnet and those guys, right? You're getting him significantly later. So, like, you're just diving into the format. And, like, with Anthony Gold, I don't expect to have much of a role on offense, but if they can do that, And 100%, like Dan's right. Like, if you can also drop these guys too. If they don't have it early, you can just move on. Because I think with these returners, a lot of them are going to be splitting. Like, Hines might be splitting too. So you just go find the other guy. So it's gonna be interesting. Like, we get that first week of preseason and camp and all that stuff, and everyone's like, oh shit, this guy's returning. And you'll see people clamor for all those guys. So
for sure.
I would have just personally, I would have, like, to your point, I would have probably gone with another running back in the range of like where Pearsall goes, or I really like Dortch. I would have hoped they got him later. But like another in that Charbonnet type range running back where I have another guy I could see to a pathway. Maybe he didn't see it. They all got gobbled up because it was already RB 43 by the time Charbonnet went. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. But overall, I actually like we talked about, I like seeing these guys do something different. So he's like, dude, they're just punting all the running backs. So once you get your elite guy, like, Mostert, I think that's pretty good. It's getting a little late. We'll probably do like one or two more of these. Let's talk about this one from Kyle, the Emin Flaherty in the Bash Brothers division. Love that one. Heavy wide receiver early. So how do you feel about starting 3 wide receivers out of the gate? And these are all the guys that could be a potential wide receiver one, so they have the ability to get there for you. Would you be comfortable starting your roster out with that type of build? And then, like, they got Kyrie in the 4th. I think that's great value. But is this something you'd be comfortable doing when you're building your rosters?
It's hard because these guys will get the volume, right? These guys are all going to be alpha, so it could definitely work. And I'm not bad at Purdy being your QB1, and then you have Rodgers there too. To start, I'd be scared, but looking at how the roster filled out, not as much. You know what I mean? So, like, to start, I'd be like, shit, man, like these wide receivers are falling to me. This is great value, though, so I can't pass on them. So, all right, I'm with that. Get it. And then it's like, okay, now it's like, all right, I could get Kyrie as my RB1. Okay, cool. I get Brock Purdy as a QB1. Cool. I could bring in Devontae Smith. Great value. And then you bring in Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, honestly, if he's healthy, he could be MVP season. We see him do this shit all the time where he's like, not anything. And then the next year he comes out and just takes the league by storm, right? So that could happen. Najee, if you follow, FFU, I'm a huge fan of Najee. So great pick.
Yes,
Javonte Williams, fantastic. I think he could be RB1 too. We talked about Robinson, Corum. Also, to pair with Kyron, he has the LA Rams backfield locked up, and I think that's phenomenal. And then we go into Romeo Doubs. He has a great chemistry with Jordan Love. Tyler Conklin has a good chemistry with Aaron Rodgers, and he, had a great year last year, so phenomenal. Kamali Vidal, great. Judy, great. Yeah. To start again, I would have been worried, like, shit, man, these are wide receivers, and I did not want to go wide. I do have Amon Ra on my roster as well. I didn't want to go wide receiver early, going like 3 like that. I actually had like a rainbow in mind, but I do like the idea of it because now you have guaranteed studs. Each one of those is going to see over 100 targets. Each one of those is likely going to get at minimum 85 receptions at minimum. And now you're talking about throwing in the first downs, and then you get that PPR for the receptions, the half PPR. So all those things played a factor why you did it. And also you have Devontae Smith in there too. So you essentially have 3. I know AJ Brown is the one in Philly, but you essentially have 3 guys that can be a wide receiver 1 as flex spots. You have your one wide receiver, and then you have flexes. So I actually love that. I think this draft, what I'm looking at, I think he really did it based on the value, at BPA everywhere. And I think every time he saw the best player available, he's like, yeah, I'm just taking it, whatever it is, and that's, in a sense, that's a great rate to draft. I think that's when you go into a draft like this, you have the plan, but then it gets thrown out. So it's like, all right, man, I'm just going to take this guy because, I know he's going to put in work. He's going to see the work on the field. So good build there. Around and Devontae Walker that late. I mean, that could be a steal too.
100%. I think, to Dan's point, I think that's the thing with the kick returners and like the back half of this draft. I really like how they did the first half of this draft because they got volume backs, and that's what you want in this scoring format. Harris is gonna be a volume back. Javonte, I know we talk about Javonte, like he's still gonna get volume. Brian Robinson could be the guy in Washington, like. Rookie quarterbacks love their running backs, and this is something that like could favor him. I know people are worried about Jaden Daniels and the up and down nature of that offense. Like Brian Robinson, if he's catching passes from him, he checks every box you want. And I know people think he's kind of a plotter. He's not. He was way better than Eckler last year, and he's more than likely going to be better than him this year. So I think he's a really good value pick at this range. The tight ends, I'm a little confused why he went so heavily on those tight ends late. Like I like Jonnu Smith. I think that's just a little bit early for him. Hayden Hurst, it's Theo, I think it's really difficult for those guys to get into your lineup because we don't have to start so many guys, even with a scoring format. So I would have personally just gone after some returners and just guys I theoretically have that upside because, what's the upside with Hayden Hurst? Can he be a top 20 tight end? Maybe he's connected to Herbert, so he has that going for him. If he has the role and he's running all the routes, it's entirely possible. I just don't know. We haven't seen him do that in years, so entirely possible, and that could work out. I think the one with Herbert, I think is interesting because if he gets traded or if he gets moved, then yeah.
I think with the tight ends, at that point in the draft, you're like, shit, I need that position. So you're streaming it regardless, right? Like I don't see any of them. Like he's like, I'm starting these guys every week. I think he's playing it based on matchup. So at
Mhm.
that point, I think he was just looking at guys that had the upside to start.
Yeah.
Which Smith will start for Miami, Hayden start for LA, the Theo potentially starting for the Giants. So at that point, I just want to get that position out instead of just punting it in a general sense. So
100%. Yeah. I think overall it's a really fun roster because like I like the reason why we were talking about like when I put up that poster, I was like, fuck wide receivers is Scott Fishbowl. I didn't expect the value to fall as good as it did because like we've been so wide receiver heavy about that. Like you're talking about Garrett Wilson in the third round. That's like an absolute smash. A guy that is going to you talked about 100 targets. I think all these guys are going to push 150 targets. Like Lamb did it, Amon Ra is going to do it, like Garrett Wilson is going to do it again. So I think all these guys are true difference makers for you.
Yeah.
And I know the scoring doesn't reward by receivers necessarily, but the elite guys, like get the elite guys. So this is well done leaning into what the draft gives you, like being water, like we talk about all the time. Like overall, I like it. This is like a pretty good, like maybe you switch out Rodgers with a mobile quarterback, you go that. But overall, like this is just a fun draft. And we walk away with it. Like, you know what? I can talk myself into this bill for sure. So I think it's a fun one for sure about that. I think we've been going for 2 hours, so like we're gonna cut the stream short. I know we got a lot more we got to get to, and maybe we'll do another one on Saturday or Sunday or something like that. But that's gonna cut it short for this one. So, I want to thank y'all for joining us. Myself, SE, coming halfway through. Appreciate it. Always having nice having a buddy on screen with me. Doing it solo is a little different. It's a little interesting, but overall it's fun. Yeah, just a heads up, we got a lot of stuff coming. I think we have another show coming on Sunday. I'm not sure if we do or not, but I think we do. We got a lot of things coming out, so check out all of our social media platforms. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you guys think on YouTube, TikTok, all the fun places, Instagram, the FFU, all over the place. But for SC, myself, I want to thank you all for joining us on this Friday Freakout for the Scott Fishbowl. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you all later on in the week. If not, we'll see you next week. So take care, folks.